Hello, financial mathematics students. Today we're going to be covering the Unit 1 unit activity. This one's fairly straightforward, but a couple things you might need is if you have an Excel spreadsheet or even just Google Sheets works just fine. If you can have that open as well, that'll help you with this assignment quite a bit. But with that, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see, share my screen. Okay. All right, so here your assignment basically starts on page 5. Now you can read the pages before, but they're not really necessary. It talks a little bit about budget and how to make a smart financial goal. A SMART goal we'll go over a little bit, but basically a SMART goal is one that is SMART. In other words, it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's timely. Achievable and realistic kind of mean the same thing in a way, but basically it's specific. So I want to do this thing, but it has to be measurable, right? So like one of my SMART goals might be I want to record a new video every week, right? So I can measure whether or not I've done that because it's something or I have or haven't, right? Or a SMART goal in terms of like exercise or whatever. I want to increase my my squat max by 10% by the end of the season, something like that. So that's an example of a SMART goal. Notice it's achievable, right? It's realistic. It's measurable, right? The 10% or whatever. It's specific. And also it's timely. I have a time schedule for it. In other words, I'm not saying I want to do this eventually, right? Oh, my goal is to become a movie star. Okay, that's not a SMART goal because it's not timely. It's not saying what you're going to do, a specific step you're going to do in a specific amount of time. Okay, but in this case, we're talking about budget. So Roxy decides she wants to set financial goal of saving for an emergency fund. Write about some of the ways Roxy could make her financial goal a SMART goal. So how could she make it specific? I want to save a certain amount of money, right? I want to save $50 a month, every month, for the next 6 months into my savings, okay? For $50 a month, that's relatively realistic, right? It's specific, it's measurable, right? The $50 is measurable. It's specific, right? It's to the point, and it's timely. I'm saying every month for the next 6 months. So I can see from a month-to-month progress, or Roxy would be able to see from a month-to-month progress how she's doing. So you could use that example I just gave you, but you could use, you can make up your own example, right? She wants to save a certain percentage, right? I want to save 10% of my money and put it into my savings every month for the next 10 months. Okay, so you see how that's a SMART goal. Those are examples. Okay, so see if you can write, you can use one of the examples I gave you, or you can come up with your own. Okay. Next, we see Roxy created a table using some of her fixed expenses for the first 3 months of the year. So fixed expenses basically means that these expenses, they don't change from month to month. And we can see that here. For example, the emergency fund, $50 for January, $50 for February, $50 for March. You see how it's a fixed amount. It's the same amount every single month. In this case, $50 for the emergency fund. All these expenses are fixed expenses. They don't change from month to month. Some expenses change from month to month, right? Like how much you pay for gas, or how much you pay for groceries, or how much you pay for utilities. We'll get into all that stuff too. But for these expenses, these are the easiest to basically write down in your balance sheet because they are what they are. These values don't change from month to month. And you can see each of these values are the same throughout each month. Now, remember I mentioned having an Excel spreadsheet or something? What I'm going to do So here's my Excel. I'm actually going to delete all this and start up. But I'm going to just copy and paste this list here. And I'm going to put it into my Excel spreadsheet. Now, when I paste, let's see, can I paste special? Okay, let's just try just regular paste here. Okay, we don't want it like that. Don't want it like that. Let me Control V. It didn't copy and paste. Let's try again. Control C. That's not how I want. This wasn't like this before. Okay. There we go. So that worked. What I did was paste special, and then so when I clicked over here on this paste special, and then I went to as text. Now, hopefully we'll still be able to use these as numbers. Let me just double check. Okay, so they still calculate as numbers, so that's good. All right, but you can see her budget. These are her fixed expenses. Now, why do I want to pull this into an Excel spreadsheet? Well, one thing we could easily do, I can highlight these expenses here. And then if you go to insert, you can go to this pie chart and you could just click on this pie chart here. Okay. And it'll basically tell you, it'll give you a pie chart of all these things. You can see rent is the most expensive of her fixed expenses, which makes sense, right? You can see rent costs $986 for her every month, right? That's much more than any of these other fixed expenses. To make this a little bit nicer, what we could do is go over here, click on the chart. If you click on this plus sign here, and we can go to data labels. Let's actually click on this arrow as well. And we want more options. And you could have them as percentages. And let's do them as percentages as opposed to the values themselves. Okay. So you can see that there. All right. So we can see what each of these percentages are. For the rent, it's 77% of her fixed expenses. Okay. So now when we look at this, we can see which one is the one we want to pay, or the one that makes the sense, which it's obviously the first one, right? Because see how rent payment is this light blue color? Well, that's the one that has 77%. And this second one, you can see it has 77% there, but that's for emergency fund. So that's not correct. For this one, they're saying insurance is the 77%. That's also not correct. Here, they're saying transportation is the 77%, and that's not correct. So it's definitely this first one. And it's pretty much the exact same as the one we got from our Excel spreadsheet, just with different colors. Okay, don't delete this because we're going to add to it later. But let's go ahead and move on to the next part C. One of the variable expenses that Roxy knows she'll need to include in her budget is utilities. She decides to review her utility costs for the past year, assuming that cost for utilities is the same in her new apartment. How much should Roxy budget each month for utilities this year? Explain your reasoning. So, like I mentioned before, utilities is a variable expense. So, in other words, you can see each month is a different amount. During the summer, she pays more in utilities, right? June, July, August, these are the most expensive months for her, which makes sense because during the summer, usually people will run their air conditioner a lot, and the air conditioner costs a lot of energy. And so generally, that's very usual, is that your electricity bill or your utility costs are going to be more expensive in the summer, simply because of the air conditioner. And you can see conversely in the winter months usually are cheaper because you're not running the air conditioner. I mean, pretty much makes sense. So how much should she budget each month for this expense? Well, the simplest way to do it is to just take the average of these numbers. Take the average of these numbers. So how do we find the average of a group of numbers like this? Well, you simply add them up and then divide by how many there are. So let's go ahead, and if you have a calculator on hand, let's go ahead and do that. So I've got a calculator here. I'm going to add up all these numbers and then divide by how many there are. So in other words, I'm going to add them up, divide by 12 in this case. That's how you find the average. So let's go ahead and do that. 215 plus 200 plus 225. Hopefully you go ahead and do this if you have a calculator at home, or you can just use like the Google calculator or the calculator here that I'm using. Plus 245 plus 245 plus 125 . Okay, so this is the total she paid in last year towards utilities. Let's go ahead and divide that by 12 months to find the average monthly payment. So on average, she paid $180, and we'll round to the nearest cent here. So $180.42. Okay, so down here, we're going to say that she should budget at least that amount. Okay, so we're going to say in her budget, she's going to budget $180.42 every month for utilities. Now, some months she'll have a little bit of money extra, and that's fine. She should still keep that money aside, any extra money aside, so that she can pay for the more expensive months. You can see some months are more expensive than that, so some months are less expensive than that. But if she keeps this same amount each month, she should be able to cover her utility costs. Okay. Now, really, when you budget, you should probably budget more than average, right? Perhaps just budget say 200, right? Because you never know how energy costs are going to change next year, right? It might be a hotter year and you're going to have to run your air conditioner even more, right? So your utility costs could be more than the previous year. And so usually in the real world, you want to budget a little bit more than your average from last year. Okay, just in case. And if you have extra funds, that's great. You can hold on to those, but just budget for the worst case scenario is usually the best idea. Okay, so, but in our case, she's going to budget the average. So we're going to say, and write in a complete sentence that finding the average from her monthly utilities, she had an average of $180.42. So that's how much she should budget each and every month so that she has enough to pay for the variable cost of utilities. Okay. Now we're also going to add that to our Excel spreadsheet. So utilities. Okay. In this case, it was $180.42. It doesn't have the cents here. It'll still calculate the cents, but it doesn't show it on the chart. If you want to show it on the chart, you'll have to click over and it'll add more decimal places. That's this tool right here. Okay. All right. Now, and make sure to answer this complete sentence and explain your reasoning. Cool. Pause the video and do that if you need to. Okay. The remaining expenses Roxy must account for in her personal budget are food, pet expenses, household and personal supplies, and healthcare. She makes a table to record the estimated amount she spent on each expense for the last 6 months of the previous year. So we can see for groceries, you can see how much she spent each month here. And then you can see the 6-month total. So fortunately for us, they already added up the totals. Now, when we want to find the average of these amounts, we simply divide by, in this case, 6, because it was 6 numbers added together. And when we want to find the average, we divide by how many values we have, in this case, 6. So we take the total, divide by 6 to find the average that she spends on each of these expenses. These are all variable expenses, right? Some months she spent more, some months she spent less. You can see for dining out, she doesn't really dine out very much. A lot of people dine out a lot more than that. Pet expenses, you can see this is a variable expense that changes a lot. You can see in this month, $445 for a pet. She probably saw the veterinarian and had to, I don't know, do something for a pet. The other months are much less expensive. So some variable expenses, you're going to have to pay a lot on certain months, right? But anyway, Roxy's average monthly expense for her dog. So we want to find the average. So we're going to take this 1,200 and we're going to divide by the 6 months. So 1,200 divided by 6, that's 200. Okay. Roxy spent an average of blank on food each month. So for food, we want to add the groceries and the dining out. Okay, so that's important. So I'm going to add those together, the 2,313 plus the 203 for dining out. And we're going to divide that by the 6 months to figure out the average that she spends each month. So $419.33. $419. Even though Roxy spent more on household and personal supplies during the month of blank than any other month. So which month did she spend the most on household expenses? So I want you to look through this household expenses here and put down the month that she spent the most. Okay. She plans to budget the average amount of this expense. So again, how do we find the average amount? Again, we would take this total and divide by the 6 months. So go ahead and do that and put that answer there. Let's go. Once you finish those, let's move on to the next problem. Okay. Roxy's new employer pays employee bi-monthly, which is twice a month. So her new job, she gets paid twice per month. She'll earn $30 per hour with the new company. That's pretty good. She plans to continue making extra money by dog sitting on the weekends. Roxy works 40 hours per week for 52 weeks during the year. Each time she dog sits on the weekend, she earns $75. Use this information about Roxy to complete the statements. Type the correct answer in each box. Use the numerals instead of words. Roxy's annual income from her new employer before taxes will be, so we need to figure out how much her employer is going to pay her annually. That means for the whole year. Okay, so how much money will she make during the year? Well, she's getting paid $30 an hour and she's working 40 hours per week. So if we take those, let's clear this. If we take $30 an hour and we multiply by the number of hours she works a week, 40, this will tell you how much money she earns in a week. So in this case, Roxy earns $1,200 each week from her job. Now she works 52 weeks, so she works every week of the year. So we're going to multiply that by 52. This will tell us how much she earns in the year. So her annual pay that she gets is $62,400, I should say. And that's how much she makes annually at her new job. So her bi-monthly pay before taxes will be, so her bi-monthly pay, that means we're asking how much will each of her paychecks be. So if she earns this much per month, or sorry, this much per year, we want to figure out how much does she earn in each paycheck. Well, if she gets paid bi-monthly, right? She gets paid bi-monthly, that means there's going to be a total of 24 paychecks, right? 2 for each month. Since there's 12 months, she gets paid twice per month. That's 24 paychecks. So we're going to take her total and divide by 24 to figure out how much she gets paid each month or each paycheck. Okay, so each of her paychecks will be $2,600 gross. So that's before tax. To reach Roxy's yearly pre-tax income goal of $63,300, she will need to dog sit at least blank times. Okay, so from her job, she's earning $62,400, but her goal is $63,300. Okay, a little bit more. So in order to reach that goal, how many times does she need to do the dog sitting, right? It says here she earns $75 every time she does the dog sitting. Okay, so how many times will she have to do that? Well, first, let's figure out how much additional money she needs. So we're going to subtract these two values, and that'll tell you how much. So we're going to do her goal, minus what she'll earn from her job. Okay, so she needs an additional $900 from dog sitting. So how does she gets $75 each time she does the dog sitting. So how many times will she have to do the dog sitting in order to make that $900? So what we're going to do is divide by 75. And so she'll have to do dog sitting 12 times in order to make that additional $900. Okay, hope that made sense. Okay, let's move on to part F. So draw a pie chart representing representation of Roxy's one-year budget plan using the expenses and income amounts from parts B through E. Okay. So her budget plan is, well, we have to go back up to this right here, and we need to figure out all these budgets. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, and I'm going to copy, and I'm going to bring it over into our Excel spreadsheet. Okay, let me delete this chart. Okay, I hate how it's formatted, so I'm going to format these new cells just like the previous cells. So the way you can do that is change the formatting. Is that if I want these bottom cells formatted in the same way as these ones, I can just click any of these cells, click on Format Painter, and then highlight all these cells, and it'll automatically format them in the same way. Okay. Now I don't really need these amounts here. I really just need these totals. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Now, these amounts here aren't really what I want, because I want to know what's the monthly budget. Remember, these amounts were for 6 months budget, right? So this are the totals for 6 months. So if I want to figure out, well, if this was the total in 6 months, how much should she budget each month? Well, we would divide by 6. Okay. So over here, we're going to put equals, and I'm going to take this value and then divide by 6. This will give us the amount that she should budget for that every month. Okay. So we just take this and we divide by how many months there are. In this case, this was the total for 6 months. So that's why I divided by 6 here. Okay. Now for the next one, you can do the same. We're going to do equals, and I'm going to click on this cell, and then I'm going to put divided by 6. See how that gives me the average for the 6 months. And we're going to do that with the rest of these cells. Okay. A cool little trick. I could actually just click on this cell here, and you see on the bottom right, there's that little square. Like you see where the cell is highlighted, there's that little green square there. Well, if I put my cursor over it, my cursor turns into this black plus sign. If I click and drag down, it'll automatically do that same formula that I used here. So you notice this was H11 divided by 6. This one's H12 divided by 6. This one's H13 divided by 6. So it knows what you want to do. You're basically telling it, follow this same pattern down the row. Okay. Now that we have these, we have her complete budget, what we want. So the problem asks for a pie chart. So we can do what we did before. Let's go ahead and highlight this group. And let's turn them all into money. Okay, I did that clicking this $sign. And then we want to do a pie chart. So we're going to do insert, and I'm going to click on this pie chart, click on this one, and there you go. We want to make that pie chart a little bit bigger, so I'm going to go ahead and increase the size here by clicking and dragging that. And we also want to see the percentages. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this green plus over here, chart elements. Go to data labels, and then click on this right arrow. Go down, go to more options. Oh, that didn't work. Label options. Okay, let's try that again. Click here, click on this arrow, more options. There we go. I don't know why it didn't work the first time. Okay, we don't want values. We prefer percentages. Disappeared on me. Label options. Okay, here we go. click on percentages, and then we don't want values. So we only want the percentages. Okay, and that looks good. So then we can see how much should be budgeted for each for each of her expenses. Okay, so we can see that 43% of her budget will go towards rent. That's the yellow one. That's her most expensive expense. Okay. Now I wish we could just copy and paste this into our answer. Unfortunately, I tried that earlier and it didn't work. So we're going to have to just try to draw it to the best of our ability. Okay. So what we can do here is when we're out here, you can use this, this tool right here. The first one, the biggest segment was rent, right? So we're going to go ahead, and if you want, you can use this text tool, and you could write in here rent. And we should also probably put the percentage. So let's actually undo. Let's do a text box. We could do rent, and then we would say 43%. And then looking at the chart some more, we could see there's a small sliver that has this 2%. It's this gray. That's, I think, the internet usage. So we're going to go ahead and for a small little sliver, it's only 2%. So a small little sliver like this. And we want that to be internet. So I notice this is so small, I can't write it in there like I did for the rent. So one thing you could do is maybe just click a little arrow like that, and then we'll put our text box over here. And here we'll say that that is the internet, and that would be 2%. Yeah, if it's kind of weird like that, you could always click here, click on this and just move it. So it looks nice and neat. The next one over was this 4%, this tangerine or burnt orange color. It looks like that is for cell phone. So when you go back here, we want to make a slightly bigger slice here, and that's going to be for cell phone. And that was 4%. Now you just do this for the rest of the pie chart, okay? Slicing it up into all the pieces and telling us how much is in each, what each slice represents and how much percentage it is. And just do that for the rest of them. Okay, and that's the whole assignment. I hope that made sense. Hope we were able to get through it. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer them. And with that, I'll see you next time. Have a great day.